Have you ever noticed that some people seem to get what they want almost without effort? They navigate conversations smoothly, people listen to them, and doors open in front of them. Persuasion Mastery reveals what is really happening beneath the surface and shows you how to influence anyone, at any time, in a way that feels natural and authentic. As you go through this journey, you will learn how to handle difficult conversations, win disagreements without creating enemies, and inspire others to take action. When you master these skills, your personal and professional life will begin to shift. If you ignore them, you may keep struggling to hit your targets while others around you seem to move forward with ease. The question is simple: do you want to keep playing small, or are you ready to unlock your persuasive potential? Before we move on, I invite you to download the free bundle that comes with this program. Inside, you will find the ebook version of this book and an executive summary of all the chapters with the main ideas clearly organized for you. Research shows that using more than one format when you learn helps you remember and understand better. Listening while you read or review key points multiplies your results. Click on the first link in the description to get your free bundle and boost your learning experience. Right now it costs you nothing, but it will not stay free forever, so make sure you grab it while it is still available. Now let us step into the first chapter, the opening moves. Human interaction is like a complex dance, and the ability to persuade is the strongest move you can bring to the floor. It is the difference between simply reacting to what happens around you and actively shaping events so they work in your favor. Welcome to Persuasion Mastery, how to get anything you want from anyone. By choosing to listen to this book, you have already taken the first step on a path that can change the way you communicate, negotiate, and influence people. By the time you reach the end, you will hold a complete toolbox for handling almost any social situation with confidence and finesse. Persuasion is not a dark or dishonest practice reserved for manipulators. It is a basic human skill, just as fundamental as language itself. Every single day, you try to influence people in big and small ways, often without even noticing it. You might try to convince a friend to watch a new series, ask a partner to support one of your ideas, or present a bold proposal to your boss or to a group of investors. At the heart of each of these moments lies the same ability, the power to move someone else in your direction. Here is something most people never fully understand: persuasion is a learnable skill. It is not a mysterious talent granted to a chosen few at birth. It is a collection of methods, mindsets, and strategies that anyone can train, refine, and eventually master with the right guidance and consistent practice. Think of this audiobook as your personal roadmap to becoming a true master of influence. Follow it step by step and you will be able to set clear goals, communicate them in a way that lands, and dramatically increase the chances of getting the responses you want. As we begin, it is important to realize that persuasion is both an art and a science. On one side, it calls for creativity, intuition, and emotional sensitivity. On the other side, it is grounded in psychology, behavioral research, and proven principles of human decision-making. Throughout this book, you will see these two dimensions working together: theory and practice, logic and instinct. A central idea behind this program is the theory of social influence, which sits at the core of effective persuasion. This theory identifies 5 main forms of influence: coercive, legitimate, expert, referent, and reward-based. Each type plays a different role in human interaction, and when you understand how they work, you can start choosing the right one for each situation instead of relying on guesswork. Coercive influence is based on the threat of negative consequences. It can work in the short term, but it often creates hidden resistance, frustration, and a desire to push back. Legitimate influence comes from an official role or recognized position, like a manager, a teacher, or a leader. Expert influence is built on specialized knowledge and competence. Referent influence flows from personal connection, trust, and likability. Reward-based influence offers some kind of benefit or positive outcome in exchange for cooperation or agreement. Knowing these categories is just the first step. As you move through this audiobook, you will learn how to blend them naturally in your communication. You will start to sense when you should lean more on authority, when to highlight your expertise, when to build emotional connection, and when to focus on rewards or benefits. You will also see why relying too much on pressure or fear usually backfires in the long run. Before we dive into specific techniques, it helps to be clear about what you can expect as you work through this material. After your first full listen, you will already have a solid basic understanding of the main tools of persuasion. You will begin to recognize the different types of influence at play in your everyday life, from casual chats to high-stakes meetings, and you will start to apply them deliberately in your own conversations. More importantly, you will begin to develop a new mindset, one that is oriented toward strategic influence. This change in perspective may be the most valuable result of your first pass through these ideas. Instead of seeing conversations as random or out of your control, you will start to notice patterns and levers. You will realize that in almost every interaction, there is room to guide, steer, and shape the outcome. You will find yourself treating daily situations as chances to practice. A quick talk with a colleague, a discussion with a family member, even a brief exchange with a stranger will become small training sessions where you refine your persuasive skills. Over time, this conscious practice will start to feel more natural, and influence will become part of how you move through the world. If you keep applying and reviewing what you learn here, the long-term effect can be truly transformative. You will develop a level of persuasive communication that sets you apart in both your personal and professional life. You will be able to affect outcomes in many different settings, from resolving conflicts and calming tense situations to motivating a team or inspiring a group to take action. Imagine walking into any room and knowing how to claim attention without forcing it. Picture yourself guiding conversations toward your preferred direction while still making others feel respected, heard, and valued. These are not distant fantasies. They are concrete abilities you can build as you continue to sharpen your persuasive mindset and skills. So what does this process actually involve, and what are the key steps on the path to mastery? The first major step is to deeply understand the different forms of influence we have just discussed. This understanding is the foundation that supports everything else. You will need to learn how to recognize which type of influence fits a particular context and how to move smoothly from one style to another as the situation changes. Just as important is building the confidence and flexibility to use these tools in real life, not just in theory. Persuasion is not only about finding the right words. It is about presence, timing, and the ability to respond to the constantly changing flow of a human interaction. Throughout this book, you will find ideas and exercises designed to help you strengthen these qualities so that influence becomes something you embody, not just something you think about. When you start by working on your mindset and on the core principles, you can immediately begin putting what you learn into action. You do not need to wait until you have finished the whole book before noticing results. From the very first pages, you will have ideas and methods you can test in your everyday life, in real conversations and real situations. As we continue, we will go deeper into concrete strategies. In the next chapter, which is all about setting the stage, you will discover how to build the ideal context for persuasion. You will see how priming works, and how small details in the environment can quietly shape the way people feel, think, and react long before you say a single word. Before we get there, take a brief moment to reflect on your own experience with influence. Think back to times when you managed to change someone's mind, and to moments when your arguments fell flat even though you felt you were right. This simple reflection is already a step toward becoming a stronger persuader, because it trains you to observe what actually happens in your interactions instead of leaving it to chance. As you move through this journey, try to stay curious and engaged. Revisit the parts that resonate with you, pause the audio when an idea strikes you, and imagine how you could use it in conversations that matter. The more actively you work with these concepts, the faster they will turn into natural habits rather than abstract theory. Now let us turn to the world around you, because the environment you choose or create plays a huge role in how persuasive you can be. Have you ever noticed that some conversations feel smooth and effortless, while others feel tense, awkward, or forced? Very often, the difference is not in the people involved, but in the setting and the mood that surround the interaction. The physical space, the level of noise, the lighting, and even the emotional atmosphere all influence how open someone is to your message. You cannot always control every external factor, but you can learn to shape the context as much as possible. Instead of leaving things to luck, you become intentional about where, when, and how a conversation unfolds. Think about a time when you had to discuss something important in a noisy, crowded place. Maybe you were distracted, or the other person kept looking around, and it was hard to connect. Now compare that to a calm, private space where both of you felt comfortable and focused. In the second scenario, you probably found it easier to listen, to express yourself clearly, and to reach an agreement. That is the power of environment in action. Creating the right atmosphere is like preparing a stage before a performance. When the lights, props, and sound are all set up properly, the actors can fully express their talent. In the same way, when you pay attention to the conditions surrounding a conversation, you make it much easier for your message to land in the way you intend. One of the key concepts we will explore is priming, which happens when subtle cues influence how people interpret what comes next. This often works below conscious awareness. A warm, well-organized room can encourage people to feel relaxed and receptive. Harsh lighting, clutter, or constant interruptions can put them on edge, even if they do not realize why. Your goal is to use these elements ethically, to support honest and constructive influence. Environmental influence goes beyond the physical setting. It also includes the expectations and emotions that are present in the room. When people feel safe, respected, and not judged, they are less defensive and more willing to consider new ideas. When they feel rushed, criticized, or attacked, they instinctively close down and resist, no matter how good your arguments are. Start paying attention to the small details that send big signals. How is the seating arranged? Are you facing each other like opponents, or sitting side by side like partners? Is there distracting background noise, or a calm atmosphere? Even small adjustments, like choosing a quieter corner or shifting your chair slightly, can make a noticeable difference in how the interaction unfolds. Another powerful aspect of the environment is spatial anchoring, which is the way you position yourself in relation to the other person. Standing too close can feel intrusive and threatening, while keeping a comfortable distance can create a sense of ease and mutual respect. The space between you, even if just a few steps, communicates how safe and relaxed the conversation feels. Your body language is part of this invisible story as well. Your posture, your gestures, and your facial expressions all contribute to the emotional message you are sending. Open, relaxed, and confident body language strengthens your credibility and makes other people more likely to trust and follow your lead. In contrast, tense, closed, or fidgety behavior can weaken even the smartest argument. Even your clothing can quietly influence how persuasive you appear. The way you present yourself visually sends messages about your confidence, your professionalism, and the respect you have for the situation. When your appearance matches the context and the expectations of your audience, it becomes easier for them to listen to you, believe you, and be guided by what you say. Your overall appearance also contributes to your ability to persuade. Dressing with influence in mind does not mean wearing the most expensive clothes or the latest fashion trend. It means choosing an outfit that fits the situation and supports the message you want to send. The way you dress should help you come across as capable, reliable, and worth paying attention to. You may now be wondering how to turn all of this into something practical. The best way is to begin with small experiments. Start by slightly adjusting the settings in which you hold your conversations and notice what happens to the results. Watch how people react when you change elements in the space around you or when you shift your non-verbal signals. You can also start playing with priming in your everyday interactions. Before an important discussion, ask yourself what kind of emotional and mental state you would like the other person to be in. Then think about the gentle hints, details, or pieces of information you could introduce in advance to encourage that state. Over time, this will become more natural and you will get better at preparing the ground for your ideas. As with any powerful tool, there are also risks when it comes to shaping the environment and using body language. One frequent mistake is misreading the context and assuming that what worked once will automatically work again somewhere else. The way to avoid this is to stay alert, read the room, and be ready to adjust your approach if something feels off. Another danger is relying so heavily on non-verbal communication that you forget the importance of clear speech. Posture, gestures, and setting matter, but they are meant to support your words, not substitute them. Aim for a balance where your environment and body language reinforce a message that is already clear, honest, and well expressed. As you reach the end of this part, pause and look at the spaces you move through each day. How might they be shaping your own thoughts, feelings, and decisions without you realizing it? And more importantly, how can you begin to use these same factors intentionally to strengthen your persuasive impact? Remember that mastering the art of preparing the stage is only the first step. In the following chapter, we move into the realm of psychological triggers, the hidden buttons in the mind that, when pressed, can dramatically boost your persuasive power. Once you understand these triggers, you will never view human behavior in quite the same way again. Have you ever wondered why certain ideas spread quickly while others are ignored, or why some campaigns capture massive attention while others are forgotten? The explanation is found less in the outside world and more in the inner structure of the human mind. This is the territory of psychological triggers, the internal levers that quietly guide choices and actions. As we explore this territory, prepare to peel back some of the layers of the psyche. You are about to enter a world where emotion often outruns logic, and where long-standing patterns of thought shape behavior more than we like to admit. This is the playing field of skilled persuaders, the board on which the real game of influence is played. Psychological triggers matter so much because of the way we all make decisions. Our brains are constantly flooded with more information than we can consciously handle. To cope, the mind uses shortcuts, known as heuristics, that allow us to make quick choices without getting stuck in endless analysis. These shortcuts are extremely useful, but they also lead to systematic errors known as cognitive biases. For someone who wants to influence ethically and effectively, understanding these mental shortcuts and biases is like holding a detailed map of how people think. It gives you a way to move through the complex terrain of human psychology and guide others toward specific actions in a way that feels natural and effortless rather than forced. When you align your persuasive efforts with how people naturally process information, your impact grows dramatically. Instead of struggling against human nature, you work with it, using its natural flow to support your message and your goals. With that in mind, let us look at some of the most important psychological triggers you can use. One of the most basic is the rule of reciprocity. This principle taps into a deeply rooted social rule, the feeling that we should give something back when someone has given something to us. When a person does us a favor, we usually feel a strong inner push to return the gesture in some way. Imagine that a colleague surprises you with a small gift, even something minor like bringing you a coffee. Very often you will feel a natural desire to do something kind for them in return. In persuasion, you can apply this by offering value first, whether through helpful information, support, or a small service. Doing so creates a gentle psychological pressure toward balance, making the other person more open to your suggestions. Reciprocity, however, is only one of the powerful triggers available to you. Another is the principle of scarcity. We humans tend to highly value things that seem rare, unique, or at risk of disappearing. This is why limited time offers and messages like only a few spots left can create a rush of interest and faster decisions. When we believe that something is running out, our sense of desire often increases and we feel pushed to act more quickly. Scarcity does not apply only to physical products. It can also involve opportunities, information, or even someone's attention. By presenting your ideas or proposals as special, limited, or time-sensitive, you can create a sense of urgency that encourages people to move. As we go further into these psychological principles, remember that they are not cheap tricks. They are natural aspects of human behavior that influence us all, every single day. The real difference lies in how you use them. Your goal is to apply them openly and responsibly so that they improve communication and help others make choices that are genuinely good for them. This brings us directly to cognitive biases, those repeating patterns in our thinking that move us away from perfectly rational judgment. One of the most common is confirmation bias. This bias shows up in our tendency to notice, remember, and prefer information that matches what we already believe or value. In the context of persuasion, confirmation bias can block change, because people may ignore or resist facts that contradict their existing views. At the same time, it can also become a powerful ally. If you can frame your message so that it fits with your listeners' current beliefs and values, they are far more likely to accept it and make it part of their own thinking. Another major bias you will encounter is the authority bias, which is our built-in tendency to give extra weight and credibility to the opinions and instructions of people we see as experts or leaders. When people view someone as an expert or a leader, they instinctively give greater weight to that person's opinions. This is the essence of authority bias. A message sounds more convincing when it is supported by a specialist, a respected institution, or by your own clearly demonstrated competence. By building your credibility or linking your ideas to trusted authorities, you can tap into this tendency and strengthen the impact of what you say. Learning about these biases is not only about influencing other people. It is also a powerful way to understand yourself. Each of us has mental shortcuts that can distort how we see reality. When you start to notice how these patterns shape your choices, you begin to make decisions in a more conscious and less automatic way. You become calmer, more lucid, and more strategic in the way you communicate and respond. Think for a moment about situations in which your judgments were shaped by these invisible forces. Maybe you trusted an opinion just because it came from someone with an impressive title, or dismissed an idea only because it did not match what you already believed. By becoming aware of these inner mechanisms, you gain the freedom to pause, reflect, and choose your response instead of being pushed around by unconscious habits. From a persuader's point of view, psychological triggers and cognitive biases are like a map of the human mind. When you understand where the main paths and shortcuts lie, you can guide people through complex decisions with less friction and more ease. This is not about forcing anyone. It is about communicating in a way that fits the way people naturally think and feel. Of course, these principles become truly useful only when you start to apply them in real life. Begin by observing your daily interactions with more attention. Notice how people react when you give them something of value before asking for anything in return. Pay attention to how their interest increases when an opportunity seems limited, special, or time-sensitive. Watch what happens when you show that others like them have already taken the step you are suggesting. You will quickly see reciprocity at work when someone feels grateful and wants to give back after receiving help or kindness. You will notice scarcity in action whenever a person suddenly becomes more eager because they fear missing out on something valuable. You will recognize social proof when people look around to see what others are doing before they decide how to act. These patterns are part of ordinary life, whether you are aware of them or not. As you sharpen your awareness, you can start to use these triggers more deliberately. Offer genuine value first so that people feel naturally inclined to keep the exchange balanced. Present your ideas as rare opportunities when that is true, making it clear that waiting too long could mean losing a real advantage. Show that other people, especially those similar to your audience, have already chosen the option you are presenting and benefited from it. At the same time, you must always keep your ethics in the foreground. The goal is not to pressure people into choices that are against their interests. The goal is to help them overcome hesitation, confusion, or inertia when your proposal can genuinely benefit them. When you use psychological triggers in this spirit, persuasion becomes a way of serving others rather than exploiting them. There are, however, important pitfalls to avoid. One common mistake is using the wrong trigger for the wrong person or situation. A tactic that motivates one individual may leave another completely cold. Some people respond strongly to social proof, while others care more about expert endorsement or personal values. Your task is to observe carefully, listen deeply, and adapt your approach to the specific person in front of you. Another danger is leaning too heavily on these techniques and turning your communication into a series of tricks. When people feel that you are constantly trying to push their buttons, they may start to distrust you, even if they cannot explain exactly why. Short-term gains achieved through manipulation usually destroy long-term trust. Once your credibility is damaged, your ability to persuade collapses. This is why self-reflection is so important. As you use psychological triggers, regularly ask yourself why you are doing it and what outcome you truly want for the other person. If your intention is honest, respectful, and aligned with their real interests, these tools can create win-win situations. If your intention is selfish or deceptive, sooner or later that attitude will show and people will pull away from you. Understanding biases also helps you protect yourself from being manipulated by others. When you know how scarcity, authority, and social proof work, you are less likely to be swept away by them without thinking. You can pause and ask critical questions. Is this opportunity really rare, or is the urgency artificially created? Is this expert truly reliable, or are they simply being used as a symbol to sell something? Are other people acting wisely, or just following the crowd? By asking these questions, you strengthen both your personal autonomy and your persuasive power. You stop reacting blindly and start choosing your responses with intention. This combination of inner clarity and outer skill is what turns influence into a form of leadership rather than manipulation. As you continue to practice, you will find that recognizing psychological triggers becomes almost second nature. You will see them in advertisements, in conversations at work, in social media, and even in family discussions. Each time you notice one, you have an opportunity to learn. You can ask yourself how it is being used, whether it is effective, and how you might apply a similar principle in a more ethical and constructive way. All of this prepares you for the next level of persuasion, where we move from general principles to the precise use of words. Once you understand how people think and decide, the next step is to shape your language so that it flows smoothly into their subconscious mind. This is where persuasive language patterns come into play. Persuasive language patterns are specific ways of arranging your sentences so that they reduce resistance and make it easier for your message to be accepted. They do not rely on yelling, pressure, or clever slogans. Instead, they work by gently guiding attention, shaping interpretation, and creating emotional states that support agreement. One of the most intriguing of these patterns is known as the embedded command. An embedded command is a suggestion or instruction hidden inside a longer sentence, so that the conscious mind does not focus on it, but the deeper mind still absorbs it. For example, instead of saying you should consider this proposal, you might say as you think about this proposal, you may start to notice how many advantages it offers you. In the second version, the phrase start to notice how many advantages it offers you functions as a subtle command, but it does not feel like an order. The listener hears a smooth, natural sentence, yet their attention is quietly guided toward imagining the benefits. This is the power of embedded commands when they are used carefully and ethically. In the next section, we will explore more of these patterns and see how precise wording can transform ordinary sentences into powerful tools of influence, while still keeping your communication sincere and respectful. In the earlier example about embedded commands, the suggestion "get excited about the possibilities" slips into the listener's mind without sounding like an order. The idea is delivered softly, so it avoids triggering resistance while still directing attention toward a positive conclusion. Another influential language pattern is the use of presuppositions and leading questions. A presupposition is an assumption quietly built into what you say. By choosing your words carefully, you can invite people to accept certain ideas as if they were already true, without stating them outright. For instance, when you ask how quickly do you want to see results, you are implying that the person does want results and that the only thing to decide is the time frame. Leading questions work in a similar way. They gently push someone toward a particular answer simply through the way the question is framed. Rather than forcing them, you guide their thinking along a specific path. Used ethically, these tools help you present your ideas more clearly and make it easier for others to say yes. You might now be asking yourself how to put all these concepts into real practice. As with any other skill, the answer is steady practice and careful observation. Begin by deliberately framing your messages in different ways and watching how people respond. Notice which expressions make your listener relax, which examples capture their interest, and which phrases seem to create hesitation. It can be very helpful to study skilled communicators in your daily life. Pay attention to how experts speak in interviews, how leaders present ideas in business, and how public figures in politics shape their messages. Listen for the patterns in their language. You will often hear them using framing, presuppositions, and subtle suggestions without calling attention to the technique itself. You can also train yourself by practicing these patterns in low-pressure conversations. Try weaving embedded commands or presuppositions into ordinary discussions with friends or colleagues, always in a respectful and honest way. Observe how people react, and notice when a sentence seems to land more smoothly or create more agreement. Over time, these structures will start to feel natural, and you will not need to think about them so consciously. As you experiment, it is important to stay aware of common pitfalls. One frequent problem is simple miscommunication. In our effort to sound persuasive, we can accidentally create confusion or send mixed signals. The best way to avoid this is to keep a close eye on the other person's reactions. If you notice that your message is not landing as you intended, slow down, clarify your point, and reframe it in simpler terms. Another danger is trying so hard to sound sophisticated that your language becomes heavy and complicated. When you chase clever phrases or overly artistic wording, you risk losing clarity. Remember that the purpose of persuasive language is not to show off your vocabulary, but to create understanding and impact. Some of the strongest messages are short, direct, and simple. Focus on a few key ideas and express them in clear, compelling sentences. As you do this, you will start to appreciate just how powerful words can be. Take a moment to think about how you could present your own ideas in a way that feels more attractive and easier to accept. Ask yourself how framing, gentle suggestions, and well-chosen examples could help your message reach people more effectively. Mastering language is an ongoing journey. What you have explored so far is only a starting point. In the chapters ahead, we will move beyond wording alone and enter a dimension of persuasion where logic is no longer the main player. We will look at the world of feelings, instincts, and gut reactions, where much of real influence actually happens. Imagine a form of persuasion that does not rely just on facts and statistics, but on the deeper currents of human emotion. This is emotional leverage, the ability to speak not only to the mind but also to the heart. You have probably noticed that some messages touch you deeply, while others, even if they are perfectly reasonable, leave you cold. Certain speakers seem to reach past your rational analysis and connect with something more personal inside you. This happens because human decision-making is not purely rational. We like to think of ourselves as logical beings who carefully weigh all the pros and cons before taking action. In reality, our inner world is much more complex. Emotions often act as silent drivers of our choices, while our rational mind comes in afterward to justify what we already feel. This is not a defect in human thinking, it is a built-in feature. Emotions are part of an ancient, fast response system that helps us navigate complex situations quickly. They are the result of millions of years of evolution, designed to help us survive, build relationships, and react to danger or opportunity. When you align your persuasive efforts with these emotional forces, you tap into a level of influence that pure logic can rarely match. When you speak to someone's emotions, you are not just transmitting information. You are creating a bond, building rapport, and preparing the ground for genuine change. The question is how to use this emotional power in a conscious and responsible way. The key lies in developing emotional intelligence, both in yourself and in how you relate to others. Emotional intelligence is your ability to notice, understand, and manage your own feelings and the emotions of the people around you. It includes skills like self-awareness, self-control, empathy, and social awareness. Empathy in particular is crucial for persuasion. It allows you to tune into the emotional frequency of your audience and sense what they really care about, even when they do not say it directly. When you respond with true empathy, people feel seen and understood. This creates a fertile space for influence, because we are far more open to ideas from someone who clearly respects and understands us. From this foundation, you can shape your message in a way that resonates with their fears, hopes, and desires instead of ignoring them. Imagine that you want someone to support a new project. You could simply present a list of logical advantages, backed by data and projections. Or you could first pay attention to their emotional state. Are they excited by innovation, or do they feel worried about change? Are they motivated by growth and opportunity, or more concerned about stability and security? By noticing these cues, you can adjust your approach. With someone who is anxious about change, you might emphasize safety, support, and clear guidance. With someone who loves new challenges, you might highlight creativity, growth, and the chance to lead. In both cases, you are aligning your message with their existing emotional reality, which makes your persuasion much more effective. Another powerful idea in emotional influence is mirroring and emotional contagion. You have probably experienced moments when being around a very enthusiastic person lifted your mood, or being near someone tense and irritable made you feel uneasy. Emotions are contagious. They can spread from person to person quickly, often without words. As someone who wants to persuade, you can use this effect intentionally by managing your own emotional state. If you want others to feel calm, you show calmness in your tone, posture, and pace. If you want to inspire enthusiasm, you allow yourself to genuinely feel and express that enthusiasm. In doing so, you invite the other person's emotions to move in the same direction. This sets the stage for using specific core emotions as sources of motivation. Feelings like fear, joy, anger, sadness, and surprise all have a powerful influence on behavior. Fear can push people to act in order to avoid a negative outcome. Joy can draw them toward new experiences and opportunities. Anger can spark a desire for change or justice. Sadness can deepen connection and reflection. Surprise can open the mind to new possibilities. The art lies in choosing which emotions are most relevant to your persuasive goal and evoking them in a way that is honest and respectful. Used ethically, emotional leverage does not mean manipulating people into choices that harm them. It means recognizing the emotional forces that are already present and guiding them toward decisions that benefit everyone involved. To use emotional leverage wisely, you must begin with your own inner state. Before any important conversation, take a moment to check in with yourself. Ask what you are feeling right now and whether that emotion will help or harm the interaction. If you are irritated, stressed, or impatient, that mood will leak into your voice, your posture, and your words, even if you try to hide it. A powerful habit is to deliberately shift into a more useful emotional state before you speak. You might slow your breathing to create calm, remember a past success to feel confident, or focus on gratitude to become more open and kind. This is not about pretending. It is about consciously choosing the side of yourself you want to bring into the interaction. As you gain experience, you will notice how different emotional tones lead to different outcomes. A calm, grounded presence tends to invite trust and honest dialogue. A warm, enthusiastic tone can energize people and make them more willing to take bold steps. A serious and focused attitude can signal that the topic is important and deserves careful attention. By learning to adjust your emotional signal, you become far more effective at guiding the overall mood of the exchange. Another important part of emotional persuasion is learning to name what the other person is feeling. Many conflicts and misunderstandings arise simply because emotions are not acknowledged. When people sense that their feelings are ignored, they often become defensive or distant. When they feel recognized, even if you do not fully agree with them, tension often drops. You do not need to be a therapist to do this. Simple phrases like "it sounds like this situation has been really frustrating for you," or "I get the sense that you are worried about what might happen next," can make a big difference. You are not telling them what to feel, you are showing that you are paying attention. This creates a bridge of understanding on which influence can travel. Once that bridge is built, you can begin to gently guide emotions in a more constructive direction. If someone is anxious, you acknowledge the fear and then highlight the elements of safety and support. If they are angry, you validate the feeling and then point towards solutions or shared goals. If they seem discouraged, you recognize their struggle and then remind them of past successes or present strengths. This ability to move emotions step by step is at the heart of emotional leadership. You are not trying to snap your fingers and force someone to switch from fear to excitement in an instant. Instead, you offer a series of small emotional steps, each of which feels natural, until they reach a more resourceful state where new decisions become possible. Stories are one of the most powerful tools for guiding emotions in this way. Human beings are wired for storytelling. Long before we had complex theories or formal education, we learned through tales of struggle, failure, and triumph. A well-told story allows your listener to see themselves in the characters and experience emotions in a safe, indirect way. When you share a story that mirrors your listener's challenge, you invite them to feel understood without directly confronting them. As the story unfolds and the character finds a way through the problem, your listener can emotionally rehearse the same journey. This is why examples, case studies, and personal experiences can be so persuasive. They bypass the need for abstract argument and speak directly to the heart. To use stories effectively, focus on a few elements. There should be a relatable character, a clear challenge, and a believable progression from difficulty to resolution. The point is not to invent dramatic tales, but to select real or realistic situations that highlight the emotional and practical benefits of the path you are proposing. For instance, instead of simply saying this approach will help you handle conflict better, you might describe a moment when someone faced a tense disagreement at work, felt overwhelmed, applied a specific technique, and turned the situation around. As you narrate the fear, tension, relief, and eventual satisfaction, your listener experiences those feelings along with the character. Beyond single emotions and stories, there is an even deeper layer of influence, values, and identity. People are motivated not only by how they feel in the moment, but by who they believe they are and what kind of person they want to be. When your message connects with someone's core values, persuasion becomes far easier. Values are the principles and qualities that matter most to a person, things like freedom, security, growth, loyalty, creativity, or fairness. Identity is the story we tell ourselves about who we are. I am a reliable friend, I am a leader, I am someone who finishes what they start. These inner statements quietly guide countless choices. If your suggestion feels aligned with a person's values and identity, they will naturally lean toward it. If it seems to contradict those inner anchors, they will resist, even if your logic is flawless. This is why it is so important to listen carefully and notice the words people use when they describe themselves and their goals. Those words reveal what truly drives them. Once you have a sense of someone's values, you can frame your ideas in a way that honors those values. Suppose you are talking to someone who deeply values independence and autonomy. You can present your proposal as a way for them to gain more control over their time, choices, or future. If another person is driven by a desire to help others, you highlight how your suggestion will allow them to contribute, support, or make a positive impact. You can also invite people to step into a slightly upgraded version of their identity. This is not about telling them they are not good enough. It is about recognizing their existing strengths and pointing to the next level they can grow into. When you say something like a committed professional like you does not walk away from a challenge like this, you are inviting them to act in a way that matches the identity you see in them. Of course, such statements must be sincere. People can sense when flattery is empty or manipulative. Your goal is to reflect back qualities that are genuinely present, or at least realistically within reach. When your words resonate with how they already see themselves, they create a powerful pull toward action. This is where self-persuasion enters the picture. The most lasting form of influence is not when you convince someone, but when they convince themselves. Your role is to create the conditions, ask the questions, and share the stories that allow the other person to arrive at their own conclusion that your proposal fits who they are and what they care about. Questions are especially powerful for this purpose. Instead of insisting this is the right way, you might ask, in what ways could this option support the goals you already have, or how would your future self look back on this decision? These questions encourage the listener to search inside their own mind and generate reasons that support your suggestion. Arguments they create themselves will always feel more convincing than arguments imposed from outside. As you bring together emotional awareness, storytelling, values, and identity, you begin to operate on a deeper level of persuasion. You are no longer just exchanging information. You are helping people align their feelings, beliefs, and self-image with actions that serve them. When done with care, this kind of influence feels less like pressure and more like guidance. In the following parts of this journey, we will connect all these inner skills with practical scenarios. You will see how to apply emotional leverage, value-based framing, and self-persuasion in negotiations, sales, leadership, and everyday conversations. Step by step, you will build a flexible, powerful approach to influence that respects both your goals and the dignity of the people you deal with. Now that you have a deeper understanding of emotions, values, and identity, it is time to see how all of this works in real situations. Theory becomes truly powerful only when you apply it to the conversations that actually shape your life, the negotiations you enter, the deals you propose, the boundaries you set, and the decisions you make together with other people. Let us start with negotiation, because it is one of the clearest stages on which persuasion plays out. Many people think of negotiation as a battle where one person wins and the other loses. With that mindset, both sides become defensive and suspicious, and even a small disagreement can turn into a struggle for dominance. A more effective approach is to view negotiation as a joint problem-solving process where you and the other person are working together to find an outcome you can both accept. Before you walk into any negotiation, take a moment to prepare internally. Ask yourself what you truly want, what you are willing to compromise on, and where your firm limits lie. At the same time, imagine the situation from the other person's point of view. What might they fear losing? What might they hope to gain? Which values or identity statements might be driving their position? This simple preparation helps you enter the conversation with empathy instead of aggression. During the discussion, your first goal is not to talk, but to listen. When you allow the other person to explain their concerns fully, you gather valuable information and you also lower their defenses. People feel more relaxed and open when they sense that they are being heard rather than attacked. Ask open questions, summarize what you have understood, and check that your interpretation is correct before moving on. Once you have a clear picture of their perspective, you can begin to shape proposals that respect their priorities while still supporting your own. Emotional awareness plays a key role here. If you notice tension rising, you slow the pace and acknowledge the emotion. If you sense enthusiasm, you reinforce it by highlighting shared benefits and long-term gains. You are constantly adjusting your tone, your words, and your body language in response to what you observe. Objections are a natural part of this process. Instead of seeing them as obstacles, treat them as signposts that show you where the real concerns lie. When someone says this is too expensive, they may be worried about risk, not just money. When they say I need more time, they may be afraid of making a wrong choice. Rather than pushing back immediately, be curious. Ask what specifically feels difficult, or what would need to change for the offer to feel acceptable. By doing this, you transform resistance into dialogue. Each objection becomes an opportunity to clarify, reframe, or add information that speaks to their emotional needs and values. Sometimes you will realize that a small adjustment in terms, timing, or support is enough to turn a no into a genuine yes. Other times, you may discover that the fit is not right, and walking away respectfully is the wisest choice. In both cases, you are practicing honest influence rather than pressure. The same principles apply in sales, even if the context looks different on the surface. Many people feel uncomfortable with selling because they associate it with manipulation or insistent pushing. Ethical persuasion turns this image upside down. Instead of trying to convince someone to accept something they do not need, you focus on understanding their situation and seeing whether your product, service, or idea can truly help. In a persuasive conversation about a purchase, your task is to draw out the other person's goals, frustrations, and desires. What are they trying to achieve? What are they tired of struggling with? What would a satisfying result look like for them? As they speak, you listen for emotional cues and value statements. You then present your offer as a bridge between where they are now and where they want to be, explaining the benefits in terms that match what they said matters most. You might, for example, emphasize safety and reliability to someone who values security, while focusing on innovation and growth with someone who seeks constant improvement. You use stories, examples, and simple comparisons to make the advantages vivid and concrete. You address objections calmly, recognizing that hesitation often comes from fear of loss or regret. Throughout the exchange, you hold the mindset that if the match is not sincere, the right choice is to step back rather than force the sale. Leadership is another arena where persuasion is essential. A leader who cannot influence becomes a manager of tasks rather than a shaper of direction. Whether you are leading a team, a project, or a community, your ability to communicate vision, build trust, and inspire action depends on the same emotional and psychological principles you have been learning. As a leader, you begin by clarifying the outcome you want to create and the reasons it truly matters. Then you translate that vision into language that resonates with the identities and values of the people you are guiding. You show how the goal connects not just to numbers or external rewards, but to deeper motives such as pride in excellence, desire for contribution, or the wish to grow and learn. You also pay close attention to the emotional climate of the group. If people are anxious or skeptical, you take time to listen and acknowledge their concerns instead of ignoring them. You share stories that illustrate others who have faced similar doubts and moved forward successfully. When they take small steps, you recognize their effort and progress, reinforcing a sense of capability and momentum. These persuasive skills are not limited to formal roles. They are equally powerful in everyday life. You use them when you negotiate responsibilities with a partner or roommate, when you talk through a conflict with a friend, or when you help a family member see a situation from a more hopeful angle. In all these moments, emotional intelligence, clear language, and respect for values make the difference between friction and cooperation. As you practice influence in these various arenas, you will notice that your confidence grows. You no longer feel at the mercy of events or stuck in endless misunderstandings. Instead, you start to see conversations as opportunities to create alignment, solve problems, and move forward in ways that work for everyone involved. You also become more aware of when others are trying to use persuasive tactics on you, which allows you to respond with clarity instead of confusion. If you are listening to this as part of the Momentum Audiobooks experience, remember that repetition and application are your greatest allies. Returning to these ideas, testing them in real conversations, and reflecting on what worked and what did not will steadily sharpen your skills. Over time, patterns that once felt complicated will become familiar, and techniques that seemed advanced will feel natural. In the next phases of this journey, we will look at how to stay persuasive under pressure, how to handle difficult personalities, and how to protect yourself from manipulative behavior while still remaining open and influential. You will see that true mastery is not about winning every argument, but about building relationships where honesty, respect, and effective communication can flourish over the long term. Staying persuasive when everything is calm is one thing, staying persuasive under pressure is something else entirely. Stressful situations, tight deadlines, and emotional confrontations can easily pull you out of your centered state and push you into fight or flight. When that happens, you may say things you regret, lose your clarity, or abandon the skills you have worked so hard to build. The first key to influence under pressure is self-regulation. When you notice your heart beating faster, your muscles tensing, or your thoughts racing, take it as a signal, not as a failure. Your body is telling you that it perceives a threat. In that moment, your job is not to win the argument but to regain your balance. A few slow breaths, a brief pause before answering, or even suggesting a short break can give your nervous system the time it needs to settle. Once you have lowered the inner tension even slightly, your access to your persuasive tools increases again. You can listen more fully, choose your words, and see the bigger picture instead of reacting impulsively. Remember that the person who can stay calm in a storm often has the greatest influence, because others instinctively look to them for stability and direction. Difficult personalities present another kind of challenge. You may encounter people who are highly aggressive, chronically negative, or endlessly indecisive. Each type calls for a slightly different approach, but the underlying principles remain the same: protect your own emotional state, look for the needs and fears behind the behavior, and communicate with firmness and respect. With aggressive people, it is crucial not to mirror their hostility. If you respond with equal force, the conflict escalates and persuasion becomes almost impossible. Instead, keep your voice steady, your posture open but grounded, and your language clear. You can acknowledge their intensity without surrendering your position, saying things like I can see this is very important to you, and I want to understand it fully, so let us slow down for a moment. Chronically negative people often expect the worst and quickly point out problems with any idea. Rather than battling their negativity head-on, you can redirect it into something more useful. Ask them what specific risks they see and how those risks might be reduced. Invite them to help design solutions. When they feel that their caution is valued rather than dismissed, their resistance often softens. Indecisive people, on the other hand, may struggle with fear of making the wrong choice. They keep asking for more information, more time, more opinions. In these cases, your role is to simplify and support. Summarize the options clearly, highlight the main differences, and, if appropriate, suggest a recommendation based on what they told you matters most. Emphasize that no decision is ever perfect, but that movement is better than endless paralysis. In all these encounters, boundaries are essential. Ethical persuasion does not require you to accept disrespect, manipulation, or abuse. You have the right to state clearly what behavior you will not tolerate and, if necessary, to leave a conversation that has become harmful. Ironically, having firm boundaries often increases your persuasive power, because it shows that you respect yourself and will not sacrifice your integrity just to please others. Protecting yourself from manipulation is another important part of advanced influence. The same psychological triggers and emotional levers that you are learning to use can be turned against you by people with less honest intentions. When you notice an attempt to create artificial scarcity, apply fake authority, or push your emotional buttons, pause. Ask for time to think, seek independent information, and check whether the offer truly aligns with your values and long-term interests. One simple question can be extremely helpful in these situations. Would I still agree to this if I had more time, more information, and no pressure at all? If the honest answer is no, then the persuasive attempt you are facing is not serving you. Walking away from such situations is not a defeat, it is a sign of strength and self-respect. As you become more skilled at both using and recognizing influence techniques, your relationships with others begin to change. You may notice that some connections grow deeper and more cooperative, while others fade because they were based on unhealthy patterns. This is a natural part of your evolution as an influential person. You are building a life in which communication is more transparent, agreements are more balanced, and mutual respect replaces hidden power struggles. All of these abilities, self-regulation, handling difficult personalities, setting boundaries, and resisting manipulation, are essential for anyone who wants to use persuasion responsibly. They ensure that your growing power does not turn against you or the people you care about. They also make you a safer person for others to deal with, because they know you are guided by principles, not by blind ambition. In the upcoming sections, we will connect everything you have learned so far into a coherent system. You will see how mindset, environment, psychological triggers, language patterns, emotional intelligence, and practical strategies can work together. Step by step, you will be able to design persuasive interactions from the inside out, starting with your own state and ending with clear, constructive agreements that everyone can stand behind. As we bring these ideas together, it becomes clear that persuasion is not a single trick or technique, but an integrated way of thinking, speaking, and relating to others. Mindset, environment, psychological triggers, language patterns, emotions, values, and identity are not separate islands. They are parts of one system that shapes how every important conversation in your life unfolds. To make this system work for you, it helps to think in terms of habits rather than isolated actions. A single persuasive sentence can create a short-term shift, but consistent habits turn influence into a natural extension of who you are. When you repeatedly choose to listen first, manage your state, speak with clarity, and respect the other person's values, you are training yourself to become a reliable and trustworthy influencer. Start with small, deliberate practices that you can apply every day. You might decide that in each significant conversation, you will pause for a moment before speaking, check your emotional state, and adjust it if needed. You might commit to asking at least one open question that reveals the other person's real concerns, instead of assuming you already know. You might make it a routine to summarize what you have understood and confirm that the other person feels heard before presenting your own point of view. Over time, these simple actions compound. What once felt like effort slowly becomes second nature. You no longer have to remind yourself to stay calm, to frame your words carefully, or to think in terms of mutual benefit. Those behaviors start to feel like the obvious way to act. At that point, persuasion is no longer something you do only in special situations. It becomes part of your everyday communication style. Another helpful step is to reflect regularly on your interactions. At the end of a day or a week, choose one or two conversations that mattered to you and replay them in your mind. Ask yourself where you stayed aligned with the principles you have learned and where you drifted away from them. Did you listen deeply? Did you manage your emotions, or did they manage you? Did you connect your message to the other person's values and identity, or did you focus only on your own needs? This kind of honest review is not about blaming yourself. It is a way of learning from real experience instead of repeating the same patterns. Each reflection helps you notice what worked well, what you could improve, and which skills you want to practice next. If you like, you can even keep a simple persuasion journal where you briefly write down key moments, insights, and ideas for future conversations. As you progress, you may find that your sense of self begins to shift. You stop seeing yourself as someone who is at the mercy of other people's decisions and moods. Instead, you start to recognize that you have real power to shape interactions, to clarify misunderstandings, and to guide situations toward outcomes that work better for everyone involved. This is not arrogance, it is a grounded confidence based on skill. If you are following this journey through the Momentum Audiobooks experience, remember that you have ongoing support. You can return to earlier sections whenever you want a refresher on a specific topic, whether it is psychological triggers, emotional leverage, or language patterns. Repetition is not a step backward. Each time you revisit an idea with fresh experience, you understand it more deeply and apply it more effectively. It is also useful to notice the areas where persuasion still feels difficult. Maybe you are comfortable influencing friends but struggle with authority figures. Maybe you feel confident in one-on-one conversations but tense in group settings. These challenges are not signs that you are failing. They are simply indicators of where you can focus your practice next. You might, for example, decide to gradually stretch your comfort zone by speaking up a little more in meetings, or by preparing key phrases in advance for conversations that usually intimidate you. You might practice grounding techniques before important calls so that your voice stays steady. Each small step expands the range of situations in which you can remain persuasive and composed. As your influence grows, the impact reaches far beyond any single result or negotiation. You begin to notice that projects move forward more smoothly, that conflicts are resolved more quickly, and that people seek your input because they feel understood and respected by you. Your ability to create win-win outcomes becomes part of your reputation. At the same time, you will likely become more selective about the goals you pursue. When you realize how powerful persuasion can be, you naturally feel more responsibility for how you use it. You start to ask yourself, not only can I influence this situation, but should I, and for what purpose? This ethical awareness is a sign of maturity. It keeps your growing skills aligned with your deeper values. In the next and final section of this journey, we will step back and look at the bigger picture. You will see how the tools you have learned fit into the story of your life as a whole, and how you can continue to expand your persuasive power in a way that supports your long-term vision for who you want to be and what you want to create in the world. Once you begin to live and communicate with these principles in mind, you start to notice real changes in how you face your goals, both personally and professionally. You approach every situation with a more strategic outlook, aware of the different levers of persuasion you can choose from at any moment. Picture yourself entering a negotiation already knowing how to shape your proposal so that it lands with maximum effect. Imagine yourself calmly handling a tense discussion with someone you care about, using emotional intelligence to uncover common ground instead of deepening the conflict. These are no longer distant fantasies. They are concrete scenarios that you are now equipped to turn into reality. You will also start to see how much mental energy you save. Rather than forcing your way through resistance, you work with the natural flow of human psychology. You frame your ideas more clearly, you listen more deeply, and you respond with greater precision. Over time, this allows you to achieve better outcomes with less strain, because you are no longer relying on guesswork or brute force. One of the most meaningful results of this journey will be the effect on your relationships. As you apply the principles of influence and communication, you can create connections that are stronger, more genuine, and more balanced. Think about how your exchanges might change when you truly grasp other people's perspectives, when you express what you need in a direct yet respectful way, and when you consistently look for solutions that benefit everyone involved. When you communicate like this, even difficult situations begin to feel different. Disagreements become opportunities to understand and grow, rather than battles to win or lose. People start to experience you as someone who listens, who cares about their concerns, and who can guide a conversation toward a constructive conclusion. This deepened trust is one of the most powerful forms of influence you can ever develop. As these skills become more natural, your sense of confidence grows quietly but steadily. You no longer feel helpless in the face of conflict, resistance, or uncertainty. You know that, whatever the situation, you have tools you can rely on, mindsets that keep you grounded, strategies that help you think clearly, and communication patterns that make it easier for others to hear you. This inner assurance is what turns theory into lasting transformation. Remember that mastery is not a sudden event, it is a gradual process. Each time you pause before replying, each time you reframe a message more thoughtfully, each time you choose empathy over impatience, you reinforce the new version of yourself you are becoming. Bit by bit, persuasion stops being something you occasionally attempt and becomes part of the way you naturally show up in the world. From here, your task is simple, even if it is not always easy. Keep practicing. Use everyday conversations as training grounds. Notice what works, adjust what does not, and celebrate the moments when a situation that once felt overwhelming now feels manageable. These are the signs that your influence is growing, even if no one else can see the inner work you are doing. If you are experiencing all of this through the Momentum Audiobook's journey, you already know the value of returning to key ideas more than once. Feel free to listen again to the sections that spoke to you the most, or to focus on the areas where you still feel less confident. Each review brings new insights, especially as your real-life experience deepens. And if you are curious about how to take this even further, consider exploring how the power of persuasion combines with the strength of silence. There is a whole universe of subtle influence available when you learn to say less while meaning more, to let pauses carry weight, and to use thoughtful communication as a quiet but unstoppable force. To keep expanding your skills in that direction, you can move on to the audiobook Quiet Confidence: How to Achieve More by Saying Less. It is designed to help you harness the calm, focused side of influence, so you can create impact without raising your voice or pushing too hard. Together with what you have learned here, it will give you a complete toolkit for powerful, ethical persuasion. For now, take a moment to appreciate how far you have already come. You have invested time, energy, and attention into understanding how influence really works, and that alone sets you apart. As you continue to apply these ideas, you will not just reach more of your goals, you will also become the kind of person whose presence, words, and actions naturally inspire others to listen, to follow, and to grow alongside you.